place. What we mean by observation methods is whether there are testing methods, air sampling, or other methods. How do you know if hazardous chemicals are present or if the air is safe to breathe? Employees must be trained in the physical and health hazards of chemicals. Employees exposed to health hazards must be apprised of both changes in body functions and the signs and symptoms that may occur to signal those changes. It is not necessary that the employer provide training on each specific chemical. Training may be conducted by categories of hazards, such as carcinogens, sensitizers, that is or may be encountered by the employee during the course of his or her duties. In the case of temporary employees, the host employer has the responsibility with a temporary agency. A frequently overlooked portion of the training provisions is dealing with emergency procedures. If a chemical were very hazardous, more information would be expected to be provided on the MSDS and emergency procedures. Training should include measures of protection, what action should employees take to control the emergency or not control the emergency, and related information. In situations where employees are expected to moderate or control the impact of the emergency, then additional emergency responder training would be required. In this case, an understanding of what hazardous substances are and the risk associated with them in an incident. An understanding of the potential outcomes associated with an emergency created when hazardous substances are present. Documentation of training is also of great importance. Here is a simple test to see if you're properly documenting training. Go back to training that was conducted 5 years ago and determine the following elements: name of the student, date of training. What specific information was taught? If it were a video or CD interactive, do you still have a copy of the program? If it were a stand-up lecture, the lesson plan should be available for review. Who was the instructor, and what were his or her qualifications to teach the course? Explain how you can tell if the students in this training fully understood what was taught. This can be in the form of written questions and answers or other similar means. This simple test will tell you if you are properly documenting your training. Shipping and receiving chemicals and hazardous materials may be the job of only the shippers and receivers, but it's important for all personnel who use or work with chemicals to understand the process. When receiving chemicals, proper paperwork, such as the bill of lading and other identifying information, must accompany the chemical. The chemical must be properly labeled. An MSDS must be provided for each chemical received. Without proper paperwork, documentation, labeling, and MSDS, the chemical should not be received until such time as it is provided. The same basically applies to a person who uses the chemical. Is it properly labeled? Do you know where the MSDS is located? Are you familiar with this chemical, and if not, where do you go for proper training and assistance? Receiving a chemical is more than just a warehouse receiver unloading it from a truck. Proper procedures apply to everyone. If you're shipping hazardous materials, you really must be properly trained. Let's ask a few questions and see if you know the answer. Can a hazardous material be shipped by the U.S. Postal Service? Can UPS or FedEx ship hazardous materials? How do you ship a can of flammable paint from California to New York? Where do you find the information that provides the guidelines for shipping hazardous materials? Well, how did you do on the quiz? The U.S. Postal Service does not allow hazardous materials to be transported. UPS and FedEx have special programs, but you have to contact them for the specific shipment rules. You can ship a can of flammable paint through an authorized trucking company that is allowed to transport hazardous materials. The rules for shipping hazardous materials is found in the Code of Federal Regulations, or CFR 49, Part 100 to 185. What all this means is there are specific rules and standards for everything that relate to chemicals. You may not be a shipper or receiver of hazardous materials or chemicals, but the point is chemicals and hazardous materials require your attention. It requires you to read and follow the directions and information printed on the labels. It requires you to know and read the material safety data sheet for each chemical you use. If you're not sure about something, be sure and ask your supervisor. Don't take chances when it comes to your health and safety. Exemptions to the labeling requirement include pesticides, food, drugs, cosmetics, distilled spirits, and consumer products labeled in accordance with the Consumer Product Safety Act. These particular chemicals are covered by other standards. Additional products exempted from the Hazardous Communication Standard include hazardous waste, tobacco, wood or wood products, but not wood dust, drugs, food, cosmetics for personal consumption, consumer products used in the same manner, and resulting in the same frequency and duration of exposure as a consumer, ionizing and non-ionizing radiation, biological hazards. Let's explain a bit more about the consumer product exemption because these products may actually be used in the workplace. The consumer products exempted are those normally found in supermarkets and other consumer outlets. Examples are bleach, ammonia, cleaners, polish, and other similar products. If you have the same use and exposure as a normal consumer, then these products are exempted under the Hazard Communication Standard. If you're purchasing 100 barrels of bleach, then don't expect that large a quantity of a consumer product to be exempt. The HAZCOM written plan should have specific rules and procedures on personal protective equipment. The company must have an assessment of all hazards in the workplace. After the hazards have been identified or assessed, proper safeguards should be instituted to reduce these hazards. This protection can come in the form of engineering controls or personal protective equipment. Some chemicals may require the use of rubber gloves, safety glasses, face shields, goggles, rubber aprons, and special footwear or even respirators. Whenever the company requires personal protection, then it's up to the individual to wear it. When PPE is required, it's not a choice. It's mandatory to protect the health of the individual who may be exposed to potential health hazards. For persons who are required to wear personal protective equipment, such as respirators, then specific training must be provided. Personal protective equipment is an integral part of any safety program. Certainly it would be much better if all hazards could be eliminated through engineering controls, but that's not realistic. PPE is here to stay, and it takes everyone's effort to wear the proper equipment when it's required. Each day, new chemicals are added to the growing list of chemicals in use throughout the world. New, better, faster acting, more potent chemicals, better for greater living. The one thing we must do is keep up with knowledge and information. The Hazard Communication Standard is helping companies all over the world get greater control of chemical information and to develop methods and training programs to make sure chemicals don't become physical or health hazards. The program is working. More written plans are being developed. Better policies and procedures are entering the workplace, and employees are gaining greater knowledge about chemicals through effective training programs. It's a team effort, and it's worldwide. The Hazard Communication Program is spreading all over the world because there is nothing else more important than human life. Do your part. Join the HAZCOM team and make safety a major part of your job. It pays big dividends. For those of you on the internet, there's an excellent website published by the state of New Jersey. This website has over 700 fact sheets on hazardous chemicals. It's an excellent site to download these fact sheets for future use. There are numerous sites that have MSDS and other hazardous communications information.